Welcome to our Urban Legends podcast. I'm Dr. Gloria McDaniel Hall. I've been a teacher, a principal, and assistant superintendent, all within urban schools in Chicago and around the country. Our Urban Legends podcast is a forum for sharing ideas, strategizing together, and supporting each other as we dismantle the deficit narratives sometimes associated with urban education and discuss where and how amazing work is being done. So welcome to my newest edition of the Urban Legends podcast, where we celebrate everything that is amazing that happens in our schools. And I am joined today with a co-interviewer, my colleague, Keisha Rembert, who is now the coordinator of diversity, equity, and belonging at National Louis University. In addition, she was the 2019 social studies teacher of the year in Illinois. So her brilliance is like, and we're currently writing a chapter together that's going to be amazing, and we'll get that to you, Jahmal. But so last week we were at something called Connections at National Louis, which is our beginning of the year professional development, where usually they have somebody who's a speaker who inspires us for the year. But this time it was so different.
They dropped the mic.
They dropped the mic this time because we had Dr. Jahmal Cole, and who is of the organization that he started called My Block, My Hood, My City. And like we typically do, what I'm going to do is ask Dr. Jahmal to start off telling us a bit about himself, telling us his story. Welcome, Dr. Jahmal.
That's the first time anyone's ever called me Dr. Jahmal, but I really appreciate that. I appreciate being here, and thank you both, obviously, for just amplifying my work, but also encouraging me as a young activist. This work is hard. You don't really set out to say I want to do this work. It kind of you have to choose. It chooses you. And you don't have a choice. The world is so narrow, you can't turn around, and it's hard. You go through a lot of struggles. It's not a lot of money in it, and it's not glamorous. I kind of look at it like Job in the Bible. Anytime you go through a lot of tribulations when you want to change things, and the devil don't like to see you smile. It don't like to see you helping. I feel like I'm a part of the Underground Railroad in Chicago, where I'm just helping kids get through freedom. And breaking the chains in their mind and stuff like that. And it comes with a lot. You get awards and stuff like that. You get honorary doctorate degrees, but you also you struggle with there's always some new education reform word, but you just struggle with God put so much on your shoulders, you know what I mean? And you're not really you're not educated for all that. You have a dream and you have a vision and you try your best, and then you fail a lot, and you fail a lot publicly. And if you have a big ego, or if you're not humble, you can really change. So anyway, I just say that to say thank you guys for having me, because I'm just this is who I am. So my story, I always start with what the first thing I remember is my preschool graduation speech, because it became like a mission statement of my life, really. It was, "We, the class of 1988, are determined to be our best in whatever we say or do. We'll share a smile and we'll lend a hand to our neighbor, because no matter what, we'll be the best in a lifetime." And that was 50 words. My mom taught me how to do the hand gestures when I did the speech. And my dad taught me how to, he says I wrote the speech. I don't know if I did, but my dad gave me a Muslim name with an H in it, Jahmal. So everyone assumed I was Muslim, but it's just because he was, I watched the movie Malcolm X so many times growing up. I thought Denzel Washington was Malcolm X, and I really did. And everybody else was watching Aladdin. Yeah, everybody else was watching Aladdin and all kinds of cartoons, and I was watching Malcolm X. And I remember my mom teaching me how to read the Bible and memorize Bible scriptures. And her only rule is never look at your notes when you speak. You're going to be a great pastor one day. And she raised me as a Jehovah's Witness. So we knocked on doors every Saturdays. I went to church 3 times a week, not including Saturdays. And I hated going to church on Sunday because my dad was a big Cowboys fan and a football fan, and I wanted to stay home and watch football with him. But my dad made me go because he said, I don't want you to be afraid to talk to white people. And that's kind of why that's kind of his, I want you to be not afraid to give speeches in front of white people. So I want you to go to this Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I grew up like very poor, very not, I had a poverty of imagination more so than like a poverty of money. But I just remember my mom giving me a food stamp, my brother a food stamp, and my sister a food stamp, and telling us to go to the store and spend 10 cents each and bring her back $2.70 so she could get some bleach, because you couldn't use food stamps to buy basic toiletries, you know? I remember in second grade, I found out I was on welfare when I put a food stamp in a pop machine and it broke. And the teachers had to explain to me that I was poor or I was on welfare. And that's probably when I started stealing, to be honest with you, because I really I don't know if I was able to process the embarrassment. And I'm just speaking as an adult. At that time, my dad taught me how to steal. You know, I was homeless so much with my dad that, you know, my dad would go into Jewel Osco and steal us dinner. And I'd come out, I'd say, man, thank you, Dad, for giving me this orange juice. Thank you for stealing me these hot dogs. And he'd look at me and he'd say, I ain't never stole nothing a day in my life. What are you talking about? I was like, what do you mean? You just stole all this food? He's like, man, you were stolen.
But
You were
yeah,
stolen from Africa.
wow,
I was like, what are you talking about, man?
wow.
But my dad taught me how to pick locks, and he taught me how to he didn't teach me any of these things, but I thought I was cool because I saw him doing it and I knew how to do it. So, you know, being raised a Jehovah's Witness, every time that we'd have a big assembly where it'd be Christmas and everybody be singing Santa Claus is coming to town, they'd always put me in a room by myself and take the whole school to the assembly to get presents. Mm-hmm. And since my dad taught me how to pick locks, I would always steal all the field trip money out of the teachers' drawers because I was just there by myself. And I remember buying all my friends Scottie Pippen candy bars, and just like the first time I ever got caught stealing, I remember I was 9 years old, and my dad was proud of me because I got caught stealing a trapper keeper and a protractor. And he was like, "You're gonna be a senator one day. Like, you stole like all these school supplies." And I was really just I remember really just wanting to be cool, you know, wanting to be cool. I think I stopped listening in school probably in third grade because I didn't know how to do algebra, and it was embarrassing to me that I couldn't even put numbers together, let alone 2A times 2C. So I really shut down. I cared a lot about paper planes, and building social studies is always my favorite. Geography was always my favorite because I cared about history, but I didn't know what I was going to do with that at that time at second, third grade. I remember the first time I ever tasted lasagna was when I broke into a house. I think I was 9 or 10. And I remember going through the window and with my brother. And I remember opening the refrigerator and seeing lasagna in a plastic. I mean, it was a porcelain dish with a saran wrap on top. I opened it up and I ate a piece of it. And I said, this is what it tastes like to be rich. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, only rich people and then I put it back, and I know they got home who would break it just to eat some lasagna? But I was so into trying new things, and so we would break into houses just to eat blueberries or just pineapples or anything exotic. Like, only time we ever seen fruit was when my dad stole it and brought us home to us. So we never really saw name brand cereals or anything like that. So we would break into people's houses just for stuff like that. And that's kind of how I grew up. Just spent a lot of time playing chess in the park with homeless people. I ate at the shelter almost every day because we were homeless a lot. My mom separated from my dad when I was 11 and made me move with my dad. And she shipped me down to Fort Worth, Texas, and I was homeless for the next 5 years of my life. And that was my only vacation growing up from Chicago, was taking the Greyhound bus to Texas. But when I got to Texas, my dad taught me two things. One, things aren't going to be sugar-coated down here. And also he taught me what the word optimistic meant, which is still my favorite word in the dictionary, is optimistic, being hopeful towards the future. But when I got to Texas, I slept on porches, broke into a lot of houses to sleep, played chess a lot. I lived with my dad, and we lived in the back of a U-Haul truck. We lived in the back of a U-Haul truck so long that U-Haul came and took it back, right? We were nomads kind of. but I never complained because I never want to be assumed I was weak in front of my dad. So if he got to 10 o'clock at night, he's like, "You hungry?" I'd be like, "Man, we just ate yesterday. What you talking about, Mohammed? I'm straight, you know." So I grew up. I'm gonna try not to cry saying it, but I definitely grew up just afraid. I was super afraid of sleeping outside. I was super afraid of like crackheads and people coming up to me. I was always ashamed because I was so poor and didn't have anything. And my dad really, I never said this before, but he really scared me a lot growing up because when he'd be on his drugs, he'd be really happy. But when he wasn't, he was really mad. And I always told myself I'd never do drugs because of that. Like, man, like I was asking him all the time, why do you do drugs? He was like, it's just a part of me, you know? And I never seen him do like crack or no hard drugs like that. But I know from hearing my mom call him a crackhead and hearing my sister call him a crackhead, and then just learning the different smells growing up, I assumed that he did it, but he always hid that part from me. But I do remember being afraid a lot of going to drug houses and waiting outside for my dad to get, he would stay in and do whatever he had to do and then come out and he'd be, if you know my dad, you know that he wears a suit every day, like a thrift store suit every day and a tie. And he listens to Malcolm X and he was a valedictorian at Prairie View A&M. And so he was very smart. And so all he does is read philosophy books and do drugs and listen to jazz and listen to, so growing up around him, I wanted to, he always had a typewriter and said he's going to write a book. So growing up, I always knew I was going to write a book. And I've written 7 now, but I always knew it because I saw my dad with the typewriter and I was like, man, I knew I could write a book because his book was called Nigga Please. And he never finished it, but he always talked about this book's gonna get me kicked out the country, and it's gonna be about niggas stop complaining about this and niggas stop complaining about that. And so he gave me confidence to write. Like my dad's my best friend, so he's always believed unreasonably in me. Like he believes that I can be a president. He believed that I can go to the NBA. He told me a lot of lies about that growing up. I always believed him. Like he always made me feel like I was a good basketball player, and I wasn't even that good. But he believed in me so much. I just thought that I was like gonna go to the league like already. Like, man, my dad, he believed in me. And so even though we lived in motels and homeless shelters, my dad would go to the thrift store and buy a lot of paintings and put them on the wall. We always had hundreds of books in the rooms, like always a typewriter, always a library, always in a suit every day. You know what I mean? That was my dad. And so when I think about I remember just breaking into houses growing up. And my senior year, I broke into a house on Christmas night and I stole a camcorder. I think I took a camcorder and I went home to show my dad, like, Pops, I just stole this camcorder, check it out, look at it. And I don't know, I was really interested in video at that time. And my dad, he was mad at me for the first time in my life. Like, and this is my best friend, like, I could tell him anything. So he was mad at me because I broke into a house with other people. Like, why did you do this with people? Like, you got to do stuff by yourself. Like, and he made me turn the stuff into the police department and I had to do community service. And he probably saved my life at that moment, but it was really embarrassing amongst all my friends, obviously, to break into a house and have to take all the stuff back. But that's kind of when he was like, I need to step up and do something. So I struggled a lot senior year, at an alternative high school. And I was fortunate enough to find a book about college when I got there. And my dad stole a U-Haul truck. I have so much of U-Haul should sponsor me. I've had so much of a relationship with U-Haul. That's what
They really should. The U-Haul stories are great.
I lived in a U-Haul truck. My dad stole a U-Haul truck to drive me to college. And I got there and that's the beginning of my story. I think that's is there anything else I'm leaving out? I think that my role models were drug dealers, just people in the community that got everybody acknowledged them when they came around. So it made me think they were really I want to be important like that. Everybody's acknowledging them. They wear nice jerseys but my dad, even though he did drugs and bought drugs, he was always a mentor to the drug dealers. So when he comes to the basketball court, he'd always be like, they'd be like, they'd ask him, what's up, man? He'd be like, the cost of living, I can't explain it, but like everybody respected him for like being like Malcolm X, and so he always was dropping jewels on the drug dealers. And so I being his son, you know, all the drug dealers, they protected me because they was like, man, like, your dad is like, you're gonna be. Like, I never like. My company is called My Block, My Hood, My City, but the parent name is Role Model Movement because all of my role models were drug dealers that never they just knew that I was going to do something special with my life, and like they supported me and never ever would. If I never even did drugs growing up. Like, I was so afraid. I never smoked weed. I didn't have sex. I didn't do anything. Like, nobody in my community. If I'd have ever, I remember the first time I bought some weed at 24. The drug dealer looked at me. He was like, "What the?" He's like, "Man, does your dad know that you smoking weed now?" Like, I'm 24 years old. I want some weed now, bro. But it was like, they was like, that's how I grew up in the community. Like, nobody ever would like, and now all these drug dealers that I knew growing up, they want to start nonprofits and they're in jail. They're like a state spill, and they all write me once a month and talk about, we always knew you're gonna do the stuff you're doing now with your life. But yeah, that's my story, the beginning of it. My mom is I don't, you know, we don't get along the best, but I love her. She's just she's if it wasn't for her, my dad takes credit, but my mom put the work in with me, and she you know, she was a big drug dealer in Chicago, but she stopped selling drugs at 26 when she had me, and she devoted herself to being a Jehovah's Witness. And I resented it a lot because she never told me about the streets. Like, I always wanted to know about, like, man, like, you never told me about life. Like, I had to learn it. Like, you could have told me about a lot of pitfalls and things, but you chose to like take me to church so much. But I wanted to know who you were and who, like, how you and my dad met and how you and my brother's dad met. It would have really helped me understand women and understand a lot more. But that's kind of but my mom is a great person, and she would do anything for me, and she does everything for me nowadays. You know, she's a great person, but it's just like growing up, I didn't like the structure. It was too much. No Valentine's Day, no holidays,
Yeah,
no. It was
yeah,
just crazy.
yeah. Keisha, go. I know so we've been scribbling. So Jahmal, so the thing that I love about your story is that sometimes, and I even asked you a question. I was trying to get to it when you were here, but like sometimes we see the things that our kids do in our schools and we make these blanket statements about who they are, how they are as little people. And I have to remind myself all the time, no matter what they do, they're 13 or for the most part, 14 and under, and something is happening with them that's making this behavior happen. And when you described your story to us the other day, like it just made me think of that. Like how many times I passed judgment on what kids were doing, not thinking of what they must have been going through. But anyway, Keisha.
Yeah, Jahmal, I'm like, thank you so much for just sharing that part of yourself. And so my question really is about that, right? Like, I know the power of sharing stories. It's a powerful thing. Like, it's something that physically happens in our brain when we share our stories with one another. But I want to know for you, what's the impact on you of sharing that story over and over again? Like, I'm hearing that, and I'm hearing like, it's almost, Jahmal, like, that story is steeped in so much love, but I can also understand how that story is also pain, yeah, and how that story is also remembrance. So what happens to you when you're sharing that?
Yeah, well, I always wanted to be a rapper and tell stories, like, you know, and Malcolm X told a lot of stories in his speeches. So my dad played Richard Pryor, Malcolm X. He played a lot of storytellers, Robin Givens, or whatever, Robin Williams, a comedian. They told a lot of stories, and so I always wanted to tell my story as authentically as possible, and that was therapy for me. Just talking about it. Now, my dad and brothers and sisters, they don't like hearing me tell my story because it brings up too much embarrassment. My mom was always embarrassed about my stories, but for me, I never had a therapist. And when I heard Nas talk about his story of living in hallways that smelled like pee and growing up in Queensbridge, I was like, man, like so I can tell the truth about what I'm going through and being afraid, and I can people will like it, and then everybody in the project started calling me Books, and that was my name, like, for rap. And so my rap name was Books growing up, and but yeah, for me now, it's I know if I give a good speech, the best speeches I ever give is when I cry. If I can cry, I know I wasn't afraid. I know I was vulnerable. You know what I mean? And so I want to plagiarize life with my stories. I want to tell it so true that I can tell you what I smelled, what the red line looked like, what if I can plagiarize life exactly how it happened, that's kind of my style of storytelling.
That needs to be
so
the title of your next book.
Yes, plagiarizing
life. That's the title.
Yeah.
After you write Nigga Please, because I feel like you got to write that book for your dad. But plagiarizing life it's got to be the title of your next book. And I just want a little credit when it comes out.
I take that. I'm working on a book right now called "I'm Going to the League," but you know, that's it. But at the same time, like that's my style though. It's plagiarizing life. I want to talk about how the red line chains sound when I hear them. I want to talk about all the drug bags I see on the ground. I want to talk about how afraid I was when I've been shot. I want to talk about I want to make it so real for you. I want to paint the whole picture. So that's why I say plagiarize life. Like tell it exactly how it happened in life, and that's how I try to write. Very descriptive. I'm a real descriptive writer.
The impact for you is telling and sharing that and being able to get that therapy. What impact do you want others to have? Like when I hear that story, or when
kids hear that story,
what do you want people to walk away with from your story?
To realize that I'm regular and I'm normal. Because when you see NBA basketball players, you don't ever see them missing layups, or you don't ever see them having struggles. But when I read Abraham Lincoln's biography and I saw that he wrote poems to a local newspaper about sex, or, you know, he failed a lot, but he ended up being a president. Nobody ever talks about real people. Like, that's why I only read biographies, is because I feel like I want to learn. It's possible if you don't make yourself look superhero. So when people hear me and speak, or they see me, like, man, I can relate to that. I feel that. I guess that's when you say you're real that's what I want people to say, man, that's real. I can relate to that. If he could do it, I could do it. That's kind of what I want people to leave with.
So before we go, I knew our interview was going to be longer than normal because you just got so much rich stuff to talk about. But let's talk a little bit about your initiative, My Block, My Hood, My City, and how people can get involved and what kinds of assistance, or like, what can people do?
Yeah, so we're a social impact organization. I don't call it nonprofit because that doesn't sound cool, but we we raise millions of dollars a year to do whatever I want to do with it. And so I'm in a good spot of spending money, raising money, and I got 20 people that I work with. And what we do is, our mission is to take care of people no matter what. And we do simple things like put holiday lights up in the community. Well, our number one program is our Explorers program, where we take teenagers on field trips. And I told you the only trip I ever took was to Texas growing up. But looking out that Greyhound bus window going to Texas, it gave me confidence and courage that I could live somewhere else. And so Greyhound is one of our number one sponsors today because of that story. But I take kids from Chicago outside their comfort zone and expose them to different things. And if there's all these currency exchanges in your neighborhood and there's no banks, if you take a kid to a bank, they're like, I've never been here before. Or if a kid wants to be a chef, I take them to a restaurant. If they want to work in IT, I take them to a trading firm. I'm all about working with 150 students a month and exposing them to different things, different neighborhoods, different cultures, different foods. We also do things in the community that make me feel like Malcolm X. Like I might stand in front of a currency exchange next month and sign up 500 people for bank accounts. And I feel alive in front of the currency exchange because those images of seeing Malcolm speak in front of the beauty supply stores and it's so simple. Like I'm honestly, like, my motivation comes from like that. It's not even like anything deeper than that. Like besides like because the community is going to teach you what you need to know when you get out there anyway. You don't even have to come in with like you're gonna learn fast like what you need to be talking about. So I love my life. God has got me on a journey. I love my life. I never worry about money or worry about that, because I grew up so poor that, you know, having money to me is just like it's energy. It's like real energy. My goal is to like probably raise $100 million and give it away. I would love to do that. I would love to be able to like I've gotten so many awards and done so many cool things in my life. I think the coolest thing about my life now, though, honestly, is my kids. I got 3 kids. I got a daughter that's 12. I went to her track meet the other day and I hugged her. I tied her shoes before. I was nervous because I didn't want her to I mean, she had to run 3 miles and I was worried about my baby. But I hugged her and I just said, do your best. She finished number 126. And I was like, man, well, next week we're gonna get 121. Then we get one.
Yes.
And I was just so happy that she finished, and she finished strong. And my dad showed up in a suit again. I was like, man, why are you here, bro? Why are you doing, bro? Like, what are you doing all the way in Wisconsin at this thing? Like, he showed up. And I got a 5-year-old daughter. Her name is Kennedy. I named her after Robert Kennedy, and she has a speech impediment. But isn't it crazy how God works? Like, I named my daughter after the best speaker in the world, and then she would come out with a speech impediment. But I still think she's going to be the best speaker because that's her thing to overcome. That's her thing to overcome. And I have a son. I just had a son 4 months ago. His name is Justice, and he might as well be Martin Luther King because it's so loud. But he's the reason why I'm not getting no sleep. And of course, my wife is she's a doctor at University of Kentucky. She's a professor there, and so we live in Beverly in Chicago, and we're trying to make the best thing out of life. So.
Oh my God. Okay, so your legacy. Keisha had a question about your legacy, and so we're gonna do the legacy question and then the quote, because I really like it feels like the sky is the total limit. It's beyond the sky in terms of what could happen when people hear your message, and people who, I know that teachers need to hear your message. Teachers who are in front of working with, trying to empower kids who come from the exact circumstances that you described. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh
just,
my goodness. Yeah. There's so many things I want teachers to hear in your story. Like the fact that you said you stopped listening in 3rd grade, the fact that there were hundreds of books in your house, like that. So often we tell stories and then we have these other stories that we tell ourselves.
Yes.
And I love that your story is a counter story to the stories that we tell ourselves. But my question for you, Jahmal, is what's the enduring legacy of the people you engage with daily? So what do you think their legacy is? Because you're working, and I hear you talking about working with young people and empowering them. What do you think is their legacy?
If you can make it, if you can make it to Chicago, you can make it anywhere. I think our legacy is knowing where we come from and getting back to Africa. I think that's ultimately what the goal is to shed off these chains of oppression, know what oppression looks like. We don't even, it's a real thing. The way it's been cloaked up and trumped up laws and false media, we don't even know how injustice is being sustained in the country. Calling it out so we can see what oppression looks like. Traveling. Well, I think if I think of legacy, though, I think of resilience. I think that we're the most resilient people in the world, the face of the world. Like, you know what I mean? To go through what we go through, what we've gone through in the last 500 years man, it really it really is powerful, and I don't want to water it down ever. I don't want to water it down. I don't want I'm tired of in the communities when people say, where are you going to? I gotta go to work, man. Well, I gotta go to the slave ship. Or I gotta go to the plantation. It's like, bro, you work at Amazon. Like, stop saying that. Like, you could, there wasn't no minimum wage to be a slave, bro. You know what I mean? It wasn't no healthcare benefits. The things we tell ourselves in the community can make our psyche really lazy. Like, you talk to somebody, you say, what you doing today? Oh man, I'm just trying to stay out the way. What you doing for your birthday? I ain't doing that. I'm trying to stay out the way. What you is, it's like, bro, like you should be trying to get in the way. But we have all these things in the community that promote like laziness. And I'm trying to that's why I like going to the currency exchange line and hear them so I can hear them and I can speak about them. And that's kind of that's what I love about life. Like, I love teaching. I'm a teacher like y'all. I just teach at the currency exchange line and I try to teach people. So.
I think we all need to teach at the currency exchange.
I want to teach at the currency.
The walls of education, not within the school.
Yes.
You are the real teacher.
You're the real teacher.
Yeah.
Gracias. Yeah. Yep.
So when I heard you speak the other day, sometimes when I hear certain people reminds me of something, and I went straight to Nicole Hannah Jones's quotes. One of her quotes says, "None of us can be held responsible for the wrongs of our ancestors. But if today we choose not to do the right and necessary thing, that burden we own." So your story made me feel like no matter what has happened, the thing we do is like our legacy.
Mm-hmm.
What do
Mm-hmm.
you think in terms, how does that resonate with you, her quote?
Yeah, it makes me want to tell the truth, like about
Mhm.
how how much PTSD I have, or how much like how unworthy sometimes I feel, or
Mhm.
I don't want to I get into a lot of stress when I try to sound smarter than I am, or I try to compete with these brains that always want to debate with me. But really, like I yeah, I guess the quote makes me feel like it's my duty to tell the truth about my story as authentically as possible,
Mhm.
and try my best to become a better. I'm in therapy now, so I'm trying to learn more about why I have triggers and why I get angry and why I can't. Um, like to think that I can come through my upbringing and be unscathed is like, it's kind of like naive.
Amazing.
Then,
Any of ours.
Any of
yeah.
us. Amazing.
So
Amazing.
I just want to share the story as authentically as possible, and yeah, that's how that quote makes me feel. It makes me feel courageous to tell the truth, the unadulterated truth. Yeah. So.
And it made me feel like you are the ancestor that your children, who you just described, will be looking at. And what an amazing legacy and ancestor you will be for them and for your grandchildren and for all the people who you encounter in your initiative, the My Block, My Hood, My City. I'm so excited that you were able to join us today, Jahmal. Like I'm
Yeah.
going to get involved. So I already decided that I'm coming on King Drive, and I'm going to, I'm signing up through the site. I'm going to be decorating on King Drive, but I'm going to do whatever, helping with explorers or whatever else I can figure out how to do within your organization. That's how your story impacted me. Keisha, you want to take us out?
No, same. That's the same thing. I just wanted to say, like, thank you for speaking that truth. Like, I think so often, especially in today's society, truth has become this variant thing. And so I appreciate that you stood in your authenticity, that you plagiarized life for us and shared that truth with us. And I know that that truth resonates. And I know even in the room that you were in, Jahmal, last week, that truth, no matter how many people came from how many different walks of life, that truth resonated with the people in that room. And so I'm just really awed by the man who is able to speak that truth, because there's a power and strength in being able to share that truth and stand before us today, running $1 million organization, and running for office and challenging people in such a courageous way, when you know that at one point you were a scared little boy. And I know that because at some points I'm still a scared little girl from the South Side of Chicago.
Yeah.
So there are ways in which our stories intersect. And so I'm just so thankful that you're sharing that story and that you're demystifying what the Chicago hood is. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys inspire me. Thank you for pouring into me. I receive all this. And again, like definitely come out on King Drive. I never had a Christmas tree or nothing like that my whole life. Never celebrated Christmas, but I know I know how I can inspire hope or interrupt trauma if you see lights. And I remember it growing up. So I love it. I hope you guys can get out there. And just thank you for putting me on a podcast. Urban Legends. I can't wait to support. I will share this in my newsletter when it comes out.
Yay.
And I will represent as well. So and please like hit me up so I can get y'all hoodies. My Block My City hoodies. Those are I got
the orange one, Jahmal.
I ordered the gray one, I think.
I've had mine for a while. That orange one is hot, and I love it, and I rock it well.
Cool. My wife teases me because I use a hoodie I got a hoodie for my pillowcase. I got a hoodie for the dirty clothes bin. I got a hoodie. She's like, stop using these.